Howdy ho, all you lovely people out there. My name is Jake Bennett, and with me, as always, is the amazing, the illustrious, the Aussie, Mr. Michael Dorinda. How's it going, Michael?
Hello. Yeah, going well. Bit cold.
I see you got your Lakers wear on there.
I'm celebrating the Nuggets getting knocked out of the second round.
There you go. I should be keeping up more with it. Give me the latest. Give me what's going on. What's the drama?
So the Lakers got knocked out in the first round in 5 games to the Nuggets.
Okay.
New York made the biggest push they've made in a long time. The Knicks made it to the second round, and Coach Tibbs likes to play his players lots of minutes, and that kind of caught up with them in the end. I think they had Julius Randle got injured during the season. He was out, so they were playing a man down, but also only going like 7 deep on the bench. So unfortunately, they lost to Indiana. Indiana and Celtics will play in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Dallas overcame Oklahoma City to go to the Western Conference Finals and face the Minnesota Timberwolves, who, despite being down by 26 odd points against the Nuggets in Denver, came back on like a 58-22 run or something like that, and ended up with a good win. So Minnesota.
Who's the team to watch? Who do you predict?
Well, I think Boston will come out of the East. I mean, I would prefer they don't. As a Lakers fan, I think they've gotten close enough to getting one up on the Lakers already. But I think Boston will probably come out of the East in 6. I reckon Indy will push them a little bit in a couple of games. And hard to tell in the West. Like, Luka and the Mavs are very good. Kyrie Irving, very good. But Minnesota have just been hunting all year, really. And they hunted, like, they figured out what the Lakers figured out in 2020 when we won the, as some call it, Mickey Mouse ring, that, you need to have 3 bigs to throw different looks at Jokic. And that's what they did with Kat and Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert. So they've got 3 big guys that are playing really well. But Luka is a superstar. So
he is.
I'd be happy with either of those 2 teams. I've got a soft spot for Dallas because a lot of the guys I went to high school with were Dallas fans, and so I've got a bit of a soft spot for them. But Minnesota haven't been to the Western Conference Finals in 20 odd years, so take your pick.
I feel like you need another podcast. Talking about NBA.
Talking about NBA. Yeah.
Seriously.
No, there are plenty of people out there who know what they're talking about.
It sounds like you know what you're talking about to me, dude. It sounds good to me. It all sounds great. I know Luka. We went to see a Bulls game and versus the Mavs because we really wanted to watch Luka play, and he was out that game, of course. Yeah. Bummer. That was Graham's birthday last year. So, no worries. It was fun though. We got to see the Bulls, and that was really fun. But it'll be interesting. I'm sure we'll start watching once it gets a little bit closer to the end.
This is it. There's 2 rounds left. There's These are the conference finals now.
I'm saying like the end.
June,
the end. Well, yeah.
June 6th, I think. I think June 6th, the finals will start with whoever wins these 2 series. So
we usually get a couple dudes together with our sons and go to Buffalo Wild Wings and go watch some of the finals. And so, yeah, it's always a fun time. Well, hey, folks, before I get too much further, did want to mention quickly that this episode is sponsored by Mailtrap. So we'll talk to you about them a little bit later in the show. But this is episode 215, and the date today is May 21st. So thanks for hanging out and joining us. If you love the NBA, I'm glad you got to get a little debrief of that. And if you ever have questions, you should not ask me. You should definitely ask Mr. Dorinda, who, though he lives in Australia, knows much more about the NBA than many of the people that I know. So, with that in mind, why don't we get into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, we are going to start with releases. So we've got Laravel 11.7, which was released the week of May 7th with a new rule array validation method, a whereJsOverlaps method for MySQL, a Slack OpenID provider for Socialite, and more. So let's talk about that rule array method. So Jacob Pataki contributed the rule array method. And what this does is it validates multiple array keys using the array validation rule. So it enables using this rule with arrays and collections without having the concatenation of dynamic values. And so, for example, before what you might have had to do is you would have had to say array, and then I want a backed enum value or a backed enum value 2, right? So it needs to be one of these values. And then afterwards, what you could do now is you can just say rule array, and then you specify the values that you're looking for. And so you can do this with enums as well. It supports that as well. Pull request 51250 for full details on that. So that's a nice, it's definitely nice to not have to concatenate all those together with little string concatenations. It looks kind of messy. This definitely looks a lot cleaner. So nice job on that, Jacob. Thank you so much. Stringable support in blank and filled helpers. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to take a stringable value and then pass it into the filled or blank helpers. So filled or blank are just sort of global helpers that allow you to determine if a value is blank or filled, as you would assume. But it's nice because it does things like if it's an empty string, or if it's a null value, or if it's a false, or if it's a 0, right? There's some rules around which one should be blank, which one shouldn't be blank, right? So I use these typically quite a bit. But this now allows you to do, if you had like str, like if you're making something a stringable str and then you pass a string in there, you can now pass those stringables into the filled or the blank and it will handle them correctly. So that's a nice little contribution there by Stefan R. Thank you for that. Benjamin Alis contributed support for MySQL's JSON overlaps feature that compares two JSON documents. And so you can say user : where JSON overlaps, languages, and then you can say EN or French, like English or French, and check to see if it exists, or where JSON doesn't overlap. So you can look to see if there's it seems to me almost like a array intersect,
like an intersect,
almost
yeah.
like yeah, exactly. Is there an intersection between these two JSON fields? And so you're specifying the one by saying this is the column I'm looking for, and then in the second one you're basically saying here's the values that I'm looking for. If it's any of these and it's in that JSON column and it exists, then that's what this helps for. So JSON overlaps is a feature of MySQL, but you can now use it inside of Laravel.
And before we move on,
yep.
I would be remiss if I didn't correct you. His last name is Ailes, Benjamin Ailes.
Ailes. What did I say? Ailes?
Yeah, used to work with Ben, so.
Benjamin Ailes.
Benjamin Ailes.
Thanks, Benjamin. So next one, then we have Matt Jones. I was kidding. Matt Jones. I used to work with Matt. It's good. It's an inside joke. Not really. Matt Jones contributed a new event called Password Reset Link Sent. I bet you can't guess when this fires, Michael.
Whoa, it's a tricky one there. Is it when the password reset link is sent?
You nailed it. You must have been looking at the pull request. Pull request 51253. Yeah, exactly right. Yep. So this event gets fired when a password reset link is sent. Okay, Socialite then. Moving on to Socialite. So Socialite is a Laravel first-party package that helps to ease the burden of implementing OAuth. And so now we have a Slack open ID provider for Laravel Socialite. So you can see pull request 704 for that. Martin Pau. I don't know. Maybe any help on that one?
Two A's and a U together like that. It's I'm going to go with Pau. Martin
Pau. Okay, there it is, Martin Pau. And then you've got the full release notes, of course, and changelog hosted on GitHub under the changelog.md. So check that one out if you need to. Thanks so much for writing that one up. Everyone's favorite human, Mr. Paul Redmond.
Excellent. Moving on to the news, and we're a bit of a news-heavy episode this week, a bit of PHP 8.4 rumbling coming on. So the first article here, also by Paul Redmond, is a look at what is coming to PHP 8.4. It's coming soon, which is a stretch of the term. I think November is when PHP 8.4 is due for release, but November 21st, 2024. So the release will feature 6 months of pre-release phases. We'll go through alphas and betas and release candidates and the official release. But we've been talking lately about PHP property hooks, which we've spoken about on a previous episode. It's inspired by languages like Kotlin and C# and Swift, And the syntax includes 2 syntax variants that resemble short and multi-line closures. The best way to describe the property hooks is if you've ever used Laravel's attribute syntax in your Eloquent models, where you say return attribute : make, and then you have a get and a set method. Very similar kind of thing, but this then hoists that up into a first-party sort of PHP native piece of functionality. So we'll include links to property hooks in the documentations, but largely it helps to remove boilerplate of having to create getters and setters, and allows properties to define access and update using hooks. And the other sort of big-ish feature that is coming is the ability to call new myClass, for example, without having to wrap new class in parentheses. So previously you'd have to do something like open paren new myClass close paren arrow method if you wanted to call a method directly on that instantiation, or you'd have to assign it to a variable, or you'd use like a makeable trait and create like a static make method on that object in order to go, myClass : make. So this gets rid of the need for those extra parentheses. I personally don't really like having that dangling new method there. I'd rather have the parentheses there, but each to their own. We'll have the option of going either or. So this update fixes. Of course you do. This update fixes a paper cut that makes working with class member access simpler, not having to add the surrounding parentheses or using a static constructor method. The syntax change also puts PHP more in alignment with other C-based languages like Java, C# and TypeScript that don't require the surrounding parentheses. So we have links to both of those RFCs in the show notes if you want to dive deeper into what's coming.
Do you want to talk about the next one too, just because it kind of has a lot to do with what you were talking about already with the property hooks in 8.4?
Yeah. So it's like the RFC that we just spoke about amidst the parentheses around the new expression. And we said specifically around calling methods, but you'll have access to any of those class members. So you could say, new myClass : constant, or static property, or static method, or calling properties directly or methods directly, or even calling the invoke method by saying new myClass open paren close paren open paren close paren. So there's a number of different things that it tackles. We'll have links to both of those things in the show notes to kind of go into a bit more detail.
So I think I might have messed you up on what exactly I was talking about. I was looking at the next one, which talks about the fact that the property hooks RFC. Yeah, the property hooks RFC, which is basically just saying this article is essentially just saying that we don't know for positive that property hooks are coming to 8.4. It's still possible that it could get voted down, but it's very unlikely that there's. It requires a 2/3 majority vote to pass, and right now there is 34 yes and only 1 no vote. I think
it'll probably pass.
Yeah, it's very likely it's going to pass. So I really like this.
It was approved.
Oh, perfect, great. Yeah, it was approved.
Yeah, so
awesome.
property hooks are coming.
Mm-hmm. You know what got happened? You know what happened? This was a leftover. Yep. No worries.
The myClass method stuff is still in voting at the moment, but that one looks like it'll pass. It's 25-4 at the moment, so I don't think there will be any reason for that to not pass.
There we go. Excellent. Okay, so let's talk about one other item, or a couple other items, I suppose, here, but that are coming to 8.4, which is a new proposed array find set of functions in 8.4. So there's 4 new array functions that are likely going to be coming to 8.4. We're still, again, in the RFC voting stage for these ones. But the 4 methods that are likely going to be coming are array find key, array any, and array all. So let's talk about these in order. So the array find takes an argument. The first argument is the array. The second argument is a callback. So what this does is it returns the first element in the array for which the callback returns true. So if you're thinking in Laravel world, this would be equivalent to doing first, right? So if you have a collection and you call arrow first and then you pass a closure in there, that would return the very first value in your collection or in your array that matches or that returns true from that closure. Then we have the array find key. So this function returns the key of the first element for which the callback returns true. Very similar to array find, right? So pass in the array, pass in the closure. It just returns the key instead of the value. Also, it will return null if no matching element is found. And then lastly, we have the array any and array all. So this is the second part of the RFC. And so it's possible that we could have the array find and array find key without these, but it's likely that they're all going to get pushed in together. So you can use these functions if any of the items in the array return true for array any, and if all of the items in an array return true for the array all, respectively. So array any basically just it's almost like an exists. You know what I mean? Are any of these values present in this array? Array all says every single one of these needs to match as true in this closure, and that will return a true value for you. So yeah, makes sense. I think it's basically just bringing some of I wouldn't be surprised to see in the future some of these Laravel collection and array methods just swap out under the hood to use these native implementations of it and still leave the syntax there for people who want to use it. But probably not for quite some time, as that would require the 8.4 as the minimum version. So we're looking at probably another couple of versions of Laravel before they do that. But there you go. You can use them as soon as you implement 8.4 if you want to use the native functionality rather than having to use the Laravel syntactic sugar on top of that. So 8.4, Laravel 8.4, sorry, PHP 8.4.
Yeah, those ones are still voting at the moment until the end of May, but they're passing 16 to zip and 17 to zip in the two combination or the two.
I love that. I feel like
things there. So yeah, it definitely looks
I feel like it used to be harder. I feel like it used to be harder to get some of these things pushed in.
Yeah, I think. I mean, some of the stuff previously was a little bit more complex in terms of what they were trying to achieve. Whereas adding new functionality is always just a bit simpler than trying to change existing stuff and things like that. And it depends on how much complexity there is behind the scenes in terms of the compiler and things like that as well. So yeah.
I did want to say one thing real quick.
Yeah.
So we're on 8.2 currently. We were going to make a push to do 8.3, but I looked back at some of the blog posts we had around 8.3, and I'm like, there's just nothing killer that I'm really after in that 8.3 stuff. There's not a lot there. And so the only thing that would push me to 8.3 would be end of life on 8.2. But that's not going to happen before 8.4 is released. So I'm going to just skip 8.3 for now and push straight to 8.4. That's what we'll probably do. So probably early next year is what we'll be looking at. And the things that I do really do like those property hooks. I think that looks really cool. I could see myself definitely using that and the ability to call methods directly on a newed up class instead of having to wrap it in parentheses like that too. So those are two. They're not huge things, but it's like, oh, okay, I could see myself using those. So we'll probably just hold off on 8.3 and jump straight to 8.4. Maybe the rest of you looking to make that decision will do the same. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Moving on.
Statamic 5 was released the week of the 10th of May, and the major release focuses on performance improvements, developer experience, and continued modernization of the code base. The announcement post for Statamic, which we will link in the show notes, goes into greater detail about performance, but for large, complicated sites, you might see anywhere between 50 and 600% speed increases.
Dang.
Small sites might notice a more modest bump of 5 to 10%, but with Statamic 5, the control panel has multi-site management where non-technical and technical alike users can edit, add, and remove sites. When using the flat file stash driver, you can now see the equivalent of what SQL queries would be written or run with the flat file fake SQL queries panel, which you can now see approximated SQL queries in tools like Laravel Debug Bar, Telescope, and Ray, which is nice to see the kinds of things that you might have if you were not using SQL in your Statamic application. Statamic 5 also supports Laravel 11, including integration of Laravel prompts in the command line and support for reverb, with support for Laravel 11, Laravel 9, and PHP 8 support were dropped from version 5. Let me try that again. With support for Laravel 11, Laravel 9, and PHP 8 support were dropped from version 5. So if you're still on older versions of Laravel and PHP, hold off unless you're ready to do the Laravel and PHP migrations as well. But there are a whole swag of other features and changes. Proof sites may use offline license validation. There is Laravel reverb support, as mentioned, and more to cover. So I won't go into that all because there is a lot. but we'll have links to the show notes for you as well. Statamic is open source and free to use within the limits of the solo license, and the pro license is $275 US. More details about licensing and pricing can be found on Statamic's pricing page, and for full details about Statamic version 5, head over to the official announcement blog post on statamic.com. Congratulations to Jack and the crew.
Nice job, dudes. Nice job. That's a lot of work going into those things. So nice to see that wrapped up and shipped out in version 5.
Especially performance and like significant performance improvements.
Yeah,
it's hard enough to eke
50
out.
50 to 600%.
Yeah, we had Blade a couple of weeks ago found 20% performance improvements. To go from 50 to 600% depending on the size of your site is pretty incredible. So
yeah, that
is small feat there.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of other, like you said, there's a lot of other features at the bottom there that didn't even talk about. So definitely check out the blog post for that. Okay, we are going to talk about Laravel Octane. So Laravel Octane basically supercharges the performance of your site for a set of routes that you want to specify, right? So what it does essentially is it boots your application once, keeps it in memory, and then feeds it requests. So it's really, really fast. And up to this point, we've had OpenSwool, Swool, and Roadrunner as drivers, but we now also have FrankenPHP. It's been in beta support for quite some time, but it is now out of the beta status for Octane, the Octane server option. So in Laravel Octane 2.3.10, they've removed that beta tag for the FrankenPHP stuff. And you might be asking yourself, what is FrankenPHP? It's a PHP application server that's written in Golang. Supports modern features like Browley compression and Z-standard compression and more. So this was announced on May 13th. So FrankenPHP released version 1.0, which we covered on the show here near the end of 2023. And around the same time, Laravel Octane integrated that beta support. So it's exciting to see that fantastic server option available now in Octane. Thank you so much to Kevin Dunglass and Nuno Maduro for making the FrankenPHP Octane server a reality. FrankenPHP is really interesting. It's one I've been watching for quite some time. I haven't actually jumped on board yet with anything. Some of the features that looked interesting were the ability to do, I think it's server sent events, but it's their own sort of brand of it. It's not WebSock, it's not server sent events, it's something else. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but that was the thing that was most interesting to me. So might give it a try here in the near future. We'll see.
Yeah, it's easy to spin it up, and not most applications probably won't need that level of concurrency, but it does certainly provide for quicker response times and things like that. And we're looking at it as we move our infrastructure to just use Octane, because it won't necessarily improve the performance of the application, but by using something that consumes less resources, you can downscale the environments that you're running in. Smaller EC2 instances to get the same throughput, the same performance, and things like that, or whatever your deployment infrastructure is.
That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah, check it out. Laracon AU 2024. We announced back at the beginning of May, on the 8th of May, that we were heading to Brisbane, Queensland at the QUT Gardens Theatre at the Queensland University of Technology's Gardens Point campus, right in the heart of Brisbane's CBD. We talked about all of the new things that we're doing this year. We're doing catering, which we haven't done in years past. So excited to be able to keep everyone together to mingle and network. We're doing watering holes before and after the conference. We've got After Dark. We've got official second day networking events. We've got accommodation and travel offers and all kinds of good stuff. Tickets are on sale. Blind Bird tickets are on sale at the time of this recording. As of right now, there are 8 Blind Bird tickets left. So potentially by the time you hear this, the Blind Bird tickets will be all gone, and we will have announced our first 3 speakers for this year, which I'm excited about. So if you've got any guesses who it might be, check out the Laracon AU Twitter and send those through. But being quick, because we might have already shared by the time this comes out. So very excited to have Laracon AU back again. Nice to not have a 4-year break between events and get straight back into it. And if you are in Australia or you're wanting to come for a holiday to Australia, we will be excited to see you all there.
Absolutely. Well, hey, folks, speaking of amazing things, we are happy to have Mailtrap sponsoring this episode. This episode is sponsored by Mailtrap, which is an email delivery platform that developers love. It's an email sending solution with industry-best analytics, SMTP, and email API SDKs for major programming languages, as well as 24/7 human support. You can try it for free at mailtrap.io. So thank you so much again, Mailtrap, for sponsoring the show. Absolutely. Hey, we're going to talk quickly about validation errors here. So if you were at Laracon Nashville this last year, we had the pleasure of having one of Michael's Aussie buddies, Mr. Tim McDonald, who is also on the Laravel core team, talk about Laravel precognition, which is this incredible tool to provide really great user experiences for people on your website that are going to be dealing with validation errors. And so one of the things that Tim brought up is that a lot of times we completely ignore this user experience of validation errors. In fact, most of the time what our applications do is they just swallow those errors and you never see them, right? Doesn't ever make it to your error tracking service because you'd get a lot of them. And we kind of figured to ourselves like, hey, you know what? That's kind of the user's problem. I've programmed it, like it's fine. It's going to work. It's not a big deal. But Tim was like, really, there's a lot of work that we could do to make these so much better. And so Laravel precognition does assist with that. But in addition to having Laravel precognition, one of the things he encouraged us to do was to take a look at what validation errors users are running into a lot. And so he's also created now a validation error card for Laravel Pulse that will show you useful metrics for validation errors that are impacting users. So what you could do with this Pulse card is it will show how your users are experiencing and interacting with these validation errors. Like, for example, you can show the number of times that someone has received the password field must be at least 8 characters. Right? It'll count it up for you, tell you what controller it was hitting, and how many times it happened, right? So it summarizes that information for you so you can really target like what might be going on here. Was it not clear in my instructions that it needs to be at least 8 characters? Do I need to clarify this in some helper text? What should I do here? Or the fact that the title confirmation does not match the episode title. Again, 626 times this happened. Is that something that we need to take care of? Is it not clear that this is happening? Maybe I get some browser, not browser tracking, but like session recording, right? And kind of watch what's going on there. See what happens. This happened 626 times in the last 6 hours. Like, how is that happening, right? So it includes the following main features. With the initial release, it supports multiple airbags. Session-based validation errors. It supports API validation errors, inertia validation errors, and it has fallback for undetectable validation errors that are based on the 422 response status code, which is what you'll get. What you'll send to users in the case that you have a validation error. They get a 422. So to get started with the package, you can install it via Composer. It's under Tim McDonald /Pulse validation errors. Then you can configure it as a recorder in your Pulse PHP config and then add that card to your Pulse dashboard. All really simple, all written up in the source code there. And if you've not started with Pulse, you can get started really easily. It's right in the Laravel documentation. We've got it installed in a couple of different places, and I got to tell you, it's done a great job of pointing out these slow queries or things that people seem to be hitting a lot, errors that people seem to be hitting a lot, and it's really helpful. It does a great job of aggregating this data, right? It's not like a one-off. It's not Telescope, right? It's not saying like, here's this specific request. It's saying, give me an aggregate set of information about a number of requests and give me actionable insights into my application. And so Laravel Pulse is awesome. I've really liked it. So this is another great add-on that you can use for free with Laravel Pulse. Thanks so much, Tim, for creating that, and Paul for writing that one up.
Nice one. Dash UI is a Laravel Blade component library that is inspired by Shopify Polaris, which is the design system used for the Shopify admin. So this is a component library for Blade, and it was created using Tailwind CSS, Laravel Blade components, and Alpine.js, and is designed for ease of integration and customization. The UI kit includes a comprehensive set of UI elements that allow you to quickly start building your app and customizing it with Blade components, and consists of button and button groups, avatars, thumbnails, badge, cards, empty states, form input UI elements, feedback banners, alert boxes, inline arrows, flash messages, circle loaders, popover menus, tooltips, modals, copy to clipboard functionality, navigation. And if that wasn't enough, There's even more. All components in Dash UI are customizable by passing classes or by using inline styles. You can get started with the package by checking out the project documentation and also the live demo of an Laravel application if you'd like to see the components in use. We have links to all of that in the show notes.
Very good. Okay, this last package that we have here is a really useful one, and it is called MingleJS. So I think it was Livewire 2 and Vue 2, Caleb had published this little package that was sort of unknown, but it was allowing you to use Vue inside of a Livewire application. And so it worked great. It worked fine. Basically what it did is it was Vue? Yeah. It was Vue. Vue and Livewire. Yeah, that's right. And so you could do that, and it was great. However, when we upgraded to Livewire 3, this was no longer possible. Caleb did not ship an additional one of these little things that would make sure that Vue and Livewire could play together nicely. And after asking him, it didn't really seem like he had an appetite to do that, which I totally understand, because why would you want to do that? And so MingleJS is coming to the rescue here. MingleJS is a helper for using Vue and React components in a Livewire or Filament application. So it was created by João Patricio, and it's useful for, it's saying landing pages and complex components where we want to use Vue or React, but it's really useful for anybody who is coming also from a Livewire system and wants to implement Vue or React, or is coming from Vue or React and wanting to implement Livewire, right? It kind of goes both ways. Yeah. The MingleJS works by rendering a div on the server side and then mounting a component on the client side. So the server-side Livewire component renders each JS component, so you get JavaScript interactivity on the front end, and it's isolated to that Livewire component. So additionally, the backend can also pass that data to the component on the front end, which is kind of nice. So this was always one of those things where you would have to, in your Vue, if you wanted to talk to the backend, you'd end up having to make an API. And then you'd have to talk to the backend, right? Through that, you'd have to request that from the Vue. You don't really have to do that. You can say Livewire is going to provide the data, and it can pass it through as a prop to the front end component in Vue, which is really nice. So it goes through some of the documentation here, and as well as how you would set it up. Mingle includes a Livewire component that uses this interacts with Mingle's trait, as well as a couple of things. I'm not going to go through this exact implementation because it's a little bit code heavy. We've said enough to know whether or not it's something that'd be interesting to you. We consequently ended up ripping out all of our Vue stuff and just going straight Livewire. We just used this as the motivation to say we're going to get rid of Vue and just go strictly Livewire for a particular section of the site. And so that works fine, and it's worked great. But it is nice to have the option to do Vue in the case that I don't feel like entangling like 5 different variables with the Livewire thing and having that real, front end and back end. Interactivity. So anyway, this seems like a really nice option, and so you should definitely check that one out. Thanks, Paul Redmond, for writing that one up.
Perfect.
And folks, that brings us to the end of the show. Thanks so much for listening. Podcast.laravel-news.com/215 is where you can find show notes for this episode. If you liked us, rate us up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be amazing. And if you want to talk to us, hit us up on Twitter at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, or at Laravel News. Folks, go buy some of those awesome Laracon AU tickets. We would love to see you there. At least Michael would. If I, by some miracle, get to make it, that would be incredible too. But you should definitely go hang out with Michael and all the Aussie crew out there. I'd love to see you. Michael, any final words?
Looking forward to a big and exciting Laracon AU.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. All right, folks, until next time, we'll see you.